Hello, this is David Lorimer here. Today I'm going to talk more about the preludes and fugues of Bach in relation to Schweitzer and the organ. Albert Schweitzer was born in 1875 and he was playing the organ in church by the time he was 9. Not sure how his feet managed to reach the pedals, but there you go. And then when he was about 20, he went to Paris. He just finished his doctorate and he went to Paris and he had a letter of introduction to Charles-Marie Widor, who was the greatest French organist at the time and the organist at Saint-Sulpice in Paris. And apparently, when they first met, Schweitzer was asked by Widor, "Well, young man, what are you going to play?" And he said, "Bach, of course." And he proceeded to play some of the preludes and fugues of Bach. And you can get these on CD. There are 1 or 2 performances on YouTube. And I have a collection of LPs, the oldest of which go back to my mother's collection from the 1950s. So I've been listening to Schweitzer, for over 50 years, and I find it an extraordinary experience. But many people find that he plays too slowly. But he says in this book here, this is Charles Joy, sort of Schweitzer, an anthology, that the spirit of the performance is the key thing for a performer. And this is very true of Helen Grimaud on the piano, Rosalind Jurek, Yehudi Menuhin, and particularly a Schweitzer, because he was anxious that people got the structure of the fugue. Because the fugue starts off very, very simply with its subject, and then it gets developed in 4 voices, sometimes even 5. And following the fugue through the various registers, and when it finally comes out in the pedal, is an extraordinary experience. And what I want to read to you is a passage that Schweitzer wrote describing a lesson that he had with Widor on the cathedral organ of Notre Dame. Can you imagine it? In Notre Dame organ is absolutely extraordinary. I've heard the organ on a number of occasions when I've been in Paris. What you need to do is to turn up at Notre Dame at 17:45, 5:45 on a Sunday, where they do an organ recital prior to the Mass at 6:30. So here is what Widor said to Schweitzer in his commentary. "Organ playing," he said, "on the organ bench at Notre Dame, as the rays of the sun setting stream through the dark of the nave in transfigured peace, is the manifestation of a will filled with a vision of eternity." The manifestation of a will filled with a vision of eternity. I think that's an extraordinary definition. And then Schweitzer goes on, "All organ instruction, both technical and artistic, has as its aim only to educate a man to this pure manifestation of the higher will. The will, expressed by the organist in the objectivity of his organ, should overwhelm the hearer." This, in fact, is Widor. I apologize. "He who cannot master the great concentrated will in the theme of a Bach fugue, so that even the thoughtless hearer grasps and comprehends it, whether he will or not, he who cannot command this concentrated, peaceful will imparting itself so powerfully, may be a great artist in spite of this, but is not a born organist. He has mistaken his instrument, for the organ represents the rapprochement of the human spirit to the eternal imperishable spirit." The rapprochement of the human spirit to the eternal imperishable spirit. I very much feel this myself. "And it is estranged from its nature and its place as soon as it becomes the expression of the subjective spirit," in other words, of the organist's own skill and virtuosity. So as I say, the spirit of the performance is key, and you want to try and follow the architecture of the fugue, and particularly the subject. So I'll put a couple of links below, and I hope you get as much pleasure as I do from listening to the great preludes and fugues of J.S. Bach. Thanks for listening.